Good morning, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. I'm Rabbi Ed Feinstein. This is Valley Best Shalom online, joined this morning by my dear friend and teacher, Rabbi Sherre Hirsch, for Torah study. Of course, this is Shabbat just before Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat Nitzavim, the Shabbat of recovenanting and reconnecting that we endure before we get into the high holidays, which are coming so very quickly on Monday evening. And we're going to continue our conversation, as we've done these last few weeks, about these high holidays and the themes that populate these holidays. Now, it's Rosh Hashanah. The Hebrew word shana we use for the word year. But the wonderful thing about that word is that the word shana has three implications, or actually three meanings in the Hebrew dictionary. The word shana can mean to repeat something. The shana means to repeat it. The word Mishnah, which is the code of Jewish law, is intended to be a repetition of the law of the Torah. The word shana, as in the phrase ma nishtana halayla hazeh, can mean to change something. Something's different, the opposite of repeating. And then the word shana can also mean to learn something. Shanot means to learn something. And so the question is this new year going to be a year of repetition? Is it going to be a year of novelty, of new things, of invention? And did we learn anything? Did we learn anything from the past year? Which is what differentiates, of course, the repetition from things that are new and things that are different. And I think we each have to go into the holiday asking that question. What do I want to hold on to? What is it time to let go of and reinvent? And what have I learned? Sherre, how do you ask that question?
So I love how you frame that, Eddie, just because it really forces us to say, what is essential? What's at the essential part of my being? Because it's easy to show up for the high holidays and just go through the motions. And at the end of the 10 days, right, let's face it, it's for many people, it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, but really it's the Sukkot and Simchas Torah. But it's really easy to just kind of flow through them and let the service carry you, the commitment, the time commitment, like I've got to be on at this time and but what does it mean to say, like, I really want to be intentional? And what's essential for me to think about this high holidays? What's essential that I need to take with me into the new year? What's essential that I need to let go of? And am I going to be a year of repetition? There's something that I love. First of all, I love shofarot. Like, I just think it's such a cool ritual, and I'm kind of obsessed with it. I love that it has a very small opening and makes such a cacophonous, loud sound. And one of the things I think about is every time I hear the shofar or try to blow it, because I do through the month of Elul, blow it in my house, it takes a very narrow opening to make a very big impact in terms of sound. And so we have to get very granular, very narrow about what it is we want to let go of, very narrow about what it is we want to change. We can't be like, I want to change that I never get angry, or that I'm never going to get angry anymore. It's just not going to happen. Like, what is that granular thing? And I think a lot about that at this time of the year. And I have a few examples when we get there.
No, I love that. And so let me begin our session today with a sort of request or an admonition. People come to synagogue on these high holidays. And of course, this year, some of us will be coming to the synagogue on the holiday. And this year, some of the synagogue will be coming to us. And those that will stay home and watch it on a Zoom or on TV, on virtually. And the question is, what attitude do you bring when you come? You know, you're going to come to the synagogue and you're going to sit in a nice, comfy theater seat, and you're all dressed up, and you're going to be sitting with old friends, hopefully. Are you coming to watch me entertain you? Are you coming to watch me do the service for you? You're coming to watch the cantor sing for you? Are you going to sit there passively and absorb the teaching and absorb the prayer and absorb the sermon? Or are you coming to do what the tradition called avodah shebalev, the work of the heart, the tasks of the heart? And here's the admonition, and I don't mean to be critical, but I'm telling you the truth. If you just come and sit, I can give you a great show. I mean, I can be entertaining. You know, I tell stories, I tell jokes, I teach a little Torah, I make you feel good. The cantor has a beautiful voice. He can entertain you for the hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah, we can distract you, entertain you, divert you. We can keep you engaged for a couple of hours, and you'll go home no different than you came before. If you really want these holidays, as it were, to work, if you want these holidays to do what they are designed to do, it's your holiday, not mine. It takes some time. And the purpose of the service isn't just to distract you and to divert you, it's to inspire you to look within, to look at the patterns of your life, the way you spend your time, the places you spend your money, the things that are your values, and to ask the really difficult questions. Am I the person that I'm meant to be? Am I spending my time in the ways that it's meant to be spent? Am I spending my money in the way that my resources, my energies, my talents in the way that they're meant to be spent? And if you do that work, if you really ask those questions, if you really look within, if you find the granular, if you find the places, even very small ones, to make a change, a tikkun, a repair, you're going to find that you'll walk out of these holidays so much bigger, so much more refreshed, so much more renewed. You have to become the subject of your holiday, not simply its object.
Well, so well said. And I have to give you a few tactics to do that,
Good.
because when I was a pulpit rabbi, I had a whole strategy because I love the idea of it. First of all, I don't think the Machzor is a prayer book. It isn't a book to experience. So what I tell people is take a few 3x5 cards before the holiday, put a couple questions on them. Who do I want to be this year? What word is going to define my year or spearhead my year? And throw them in your Machzor. And sometimes you're going to come across them and you're going to find them there, like bookmarks, like surprise bookmarks. The other thing is I love those little stickies with the arrow. Have you ever seen those? I love those. What are they called? 3 notes or
Stickies with arrows. That's what
stickies with arrows, especially the fluorescent ones. I'm super into them. I bring those to high holidays. There's no violation of halacha. You take them, and every time you see something that catches your eye, whether it's a word, a phrase, something you didn't see before, you put a sticky in it. And so by the end of the service, you have these stickies. So when you do get bored, which I know you never get bored, but just if there was a moment you were bored, you go back to the sticky and sort of reflect on it. And if this year you use one color sticky like blue, next year use orange, and then the next year use yellow. And I did this with my congregants for 10 years, and they would come with a Machzor full of cards and stickies, and they could see that they'd interacted with this. It was no longer a book. It was a book that they highlighted without having to highlight, right? That they were really taking it in. Something I wanted to share, Eddie, today was that I've been thinking a lot about the really finite changes I want to make. And one of them that I wanted to share publicly was I do this thing called just a minute. So someone says, hey, can I ask you a question? Just a minute. My son says, do you want to play ping pong? Just a minute. Like, I don't even know. It comes out so fast that I'm not even sure if it's conscious. It's like just a minute. Like somehow saying yes in the immediate would be a problem. So one of the things I want to work on is when someone asks, I can still pause to reflect on the thing, but that the pause is not an excuse, just a minute. I could say, and so it's funny because last night I was really been thinking a lot about it. And last night, as I shared with you a little bit earlier, my son said to me, do you want to play ping pong? And I could tell he was ready for me to say just a minute. And I paused. I was about to say just a minute because it was reflexive at this point. And I said, yes, I swear I thought he was going to fall on the floor.
Wow.
I mean, he was in shock, right? And he said, oh, Mom, you always say just a minute. And I said, yeah, I want to do things differently. And we played ping pong. It was so much fun. And I can tell you the thing he recounted to his father this morning, without a doubt at breakfast, was Mom played ping pong with me and I didn't have to wait.
Oh, I love it. That's beautiful.
So
That's beautiful.
Really getting very thoughtful, very intentional about what's the language I want to change of how I interact with people.
Mhm.
What's that way when I'm sitting talking to someone, what's the way I'm looking in their eyes? How do I want to interact with my books, right? Another thing I want to change, just since I'm on a roll, is recently I was pulled over for speeding. I haven't been pulled over in 25 years. I'm like a grandma driver.
Oh, no.
And he told me I was going very, very fast. I had no consciousness of it. And one of the things I want to do is slow down how I drive,
Wow.
because it's so easy now to just put your foot to the pedal when there's not traffic. And next thing you know, you're going a lot faster than the speed limit. And I'm not, what did they call speedy racer? I'm certainly not speedy racer. But I think really those granular changes, like the narrow hole in the shofar, make a big impact, because slowing down when I'm driving is going to force me to slow down in other aspects of my life.
See, in the tradition, they would say that's not a police officer. That was Elijah. That was Eliyahu Hanavi, who was sent to deliver you a message.
Can I just tell you, this guy really was Elijah, because I did not get a ticket. And it's not because I talked my way out of it. What I said to him is, oh my, I really was going above the speed limit and I was totally not conscious of it. I just stated the truth. And he said to me, wow, wasn't expecting that. And then I just said, I totally wasn't conscious. And I think I've become a little unconscious when I'm driving.
Yeah, of course.
And then he shared this whole story that most people have. They haven't been driving as much. They're not as alert. People are distracted. We chatted this whole thing. And then he said, I'm not going to give you a ticket. I just want you to drive slower.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So
that's Elijah.
That's Elijah.
He was dressed as a cop, but that's Elijah.
That was definitely Elijah, without a question.
So I love your idea that small changes. We have to find the patterns in our lives that are disturbing our progress as human beings, the development of our souls, and the depth of our love for our families and friends and community. And it takes small changes. I think I spoke about this last year. So for those who actually remember, I apologize. My brother, God bless him, is a psychologist, and his first job was in a diet clinic. He was interested in which diet program works the best. And I asked him, like, what did you discover? He says, well, these programs that you radically take off weight, they work in the short term. You drink green goo, and in the course of 3 months, you can take off, a lot of weight. He said, but the problem is then you snap back to the patterns you were in before. And he said, the problem is that the more you want to change of yourself, the quicker, the less it sticks. The less it sticks. He says, and this is not a commercial, of course, but he said the system that works best long-term is Weight Watchers, which was founded by 2 Jewish ladies, because they understood how we change people. Because he says it's small incremental changes in the patterns of your life. And you won't lose as much weight as you lose with the green goo, but it'll stay off longer because the changes tend to stay with you. You don't snap back to the other patterns. My dear friend and teacher, Rabbi Mark Borowitz, has a beautiful way of putting this. He says, Maimonides, in his Code of Jewish Law, in Hilchos Tshuva, in the Laws of Tshuva, talks about each of our souls as a balance. And he says, on this day of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, you have to imagine that your sins and your merits balance each other, 50-50. Your averas and your averas and your mitzvahs balance 50-50. And the next act is going to determine your fate and the fate of the world. Rabbi Borowitz had the chutzpah, and which is Mark, he had the chutzpah to correct Maimonides. He said, no. I'm 49% good and 51% evil. And I have to change just 2%. I have to find the 2% in my life that I can change this year. And that will shift the balance in the other direction. See, because if I say to you, I need you to find a whole lot more time for your children, a whole lot more time to study, a whole lot more time to become religious, I want you won't do it. And if you do it, it won't stick. And it'll mess everything. But if I say to you, could I find 2% more time to spend with my wife and my kids? Could I spend 2% more time building my soul, developing my soul? Could I spend 2% more time just enjoying life? Could I spend 2% more money on tzedakah, on charity? 2% change this year will change the world because it's cumulative. It's a compound interest, because next year it'll be 2%, and the year after that, 2%. And pretty soon you've made a substantial change in the pattern of a human life. And I love that idea.
I love that so much. It reminds me when I was first having children, and I was working as a rabbi, and it was so crazy. And I felt like I was not good enough as a mother, not good enough as a rabbi, and I wasn't giving anybody the kind of attention. I got the greatest advice. It says, she asked me, how long do you spend with your children individually each night? And I was sheepishly said, really, maybe 8 minutes, like alone with the 4 children, like, and she said, push it to 10. Set a timer and push it to 10. 2% change, like a little change. That's not 2%, but I like math, but just add 2 minutes to it. And I moved it to 10 minutes each alone with them. Then it was 12 minutes. Then it was 15 minutes. And before I knew it, after a few years, I had this designated individual time with each of my children every night. But I'm telling you, if she said to me, you want to spend 25 to 30 minutes with your child every night, I would have been like, you're talking 2 hours. I have 4 children. That's what are you talking about? And I've been doing that for years because I have the ability now to incrementally, and also on the days that I can't, to forgive myself, to say, it's a goal and it's an ideal, but it's not a failure if I don't meet it every day.
Wow, that's very important. That's just very important. So let's go back for just a moment, because I don't want to lose this thought, to synagogue tricks.
Oh, I love synagogue tricks.
No, I love what you said. I mean, putting the stickies in the book and putting cards in the books. I have 2 more.
Oh, good. And I have so many more.
Yeah, no, good. Because I want to hear some more. How to survive your synagogue on the high holidays. First of all, and this is going to sound really, really radical from a synagogue rabbi, leave the synagogue. Not leave forever. Like, go to shul, come to the service on Yom Tov, sit here for a couple of hours and pray with me. And then go take a walk. Go take a walk. I have a hard time meditating when all the hubbub of synagogue is going on around me. Some people love praying in the synagogue. I'll confess that I can't. I love the hubbub. I like seeing friends. I like reading the machzor. I love the cantor. I listen to the rabbi. I'm busy. But when I really want to get down deep with myself, I got to go take a walk someplace quiet, someplace on top of a hill next to an ocean, someplace in a forest, even in my backyard. You need to set some time aside on this holiday to really meditate on who I am and what I've become. And that's really, really important. And the other thing, and again, this is going to sound radical, coming from a working synagogue rabbi, if synagogue isn't your thing, and the service doesn't move you, and you don't quite understand what's going on, and you don't quite get into the theology of the prayer, bring a book, but bring a Yom Tov book. Don't just bring a book. I love Harry Potter, not in shul. No. But bring Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was a great Viennese psychiatrist taken to Auschwitz, who looked at why certain people survived mentally and others didn't. And he talks about how we make meaning in our lives. Brilliant, brilliant book. Bring Abraham Joshua Heschel's The Sabbath. Talk about the sanctity of time. Bring Jonathan Sacks, and they're all Oliver Shalom. Jonathan Sacks just passed away this year. Bring any of his books. To Heal the World is a great book. The new book called Morality from Sacks is remarkable. Bring one of Rabbi Sacks's books. These are remarkable books, and they will set you thinking about who we are and what we're doing to each other this year. What are your tricks?
Well, I call them hacks. What are my synagogue hacks? So another one is I say, don't wear a watch and don't bring your phone, because you're not going to go over 2 hours. I understand this year. So a watch keeps us tied and tethered to something that is out of our control, which is the length of the service. The other thing that I learned, and this is literally behind the curtain, this is like really behind the curtain, is when I was first starting out as a rabbi, I would get nervous whenever I spoke because all these eyeballs were on me, 1,500 sets of eyeballs, and so I was instructed to put a picture of my family, my favorite people, right at the top of the bima.
Oh, good idea.
And every time I felt dislodged, I could look at that to realize that which is most important to me. So what I encourage people to do is take some pictures of that which is most important to you. It can be your rose garden. It can be people in your life. It can be your dog, right? And things that bring you that sense of real purpose and meaning as images. Also throw them in the mock store. Now you're starting to say, okay, Rabbi Hirsch, literally the mock store is getting thick. If everybody's mock store came and looked worn and thick and used, that would be the greatest rabbi day ever, right? So I don't want it to look pristine. So throw a bunch of pictures in there too, because if you're going through and suddenly you come across a picture of the dog that passed away this year, you want to reflect on what's important to you and how you're going to change and what's ahead. Let me tell you, that's going to give you a lot of room for thinking.
Wow. And I'll add another, just a caveat to that, because it's such a wonderful idea. So people read the prayer book and they think I'm supposed to believe this stuff.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's right. You don't. The prayer book wasn't written by God. The prayer book was assembled over the generations of Jews, over the generations of Jewish history, by rabbis and teachers. And what the prayer book represents, the metaphor that I like to use is an art museum, right? What's in an art museum? Perceptions of the world created by the great sensitive souls who came before us. And that's exactly what the Machzor, what the prayer book is. These are collections of perceptions of the world. And if you were to stand in front of a prayer, the way you would stand in front of a picture in a museum and say, what is this author saying to me? Remember, we Jews didn't have plastic arts, not till the late 19th, early 20th centuries. We're not known, there's no Michelangelo ceiling that was created by Jews, because two reasons. One is because the second commandment said make no images, and we took it literally. And two, because we're a portable people. You know, the joke is that if Michelangelo had been Jewish, imagine trying to schlep the David statue all over Europe. I mean, so
Heavy.
Instead, what we did is we put all of our aesthetic images, all of our aesthetic urges, all of our artistic and spiritual yearnings into literature. And because we're religious, it's religious literature. So what you're standing in front of a prayer, any of the prayers of the prayer book, what you're looking at is one sensitive soul's vision of human life and human existence and what we need to do. And if you stand and say, I love this, you're not going to like every one of them. Some of them aren't very good, or they certainly don't speak to us now. They speak to a different world that we don't live in.
And some of them you may skip.
Yeah, and others are just absolutely, in the same way you would be in a museum, you may say, well, that picture's not my favorite. I want to go to the Van Goghs, right? I want to go to the Van Goghs. I want to go to the Rembrandts. I want to go to the masters. And some of them are true masterpieces, true masterpieces. And by the way, to extend the metaphor one step further, not a bad idea. Take a little print of a Van Gogh, put it in your machs.
Mm-hmm.
Because what did Vincent give us? He gave us a portal. He saw every sunflower as a portal into the deep energy that animates the world. And what he's asking us to is don't just pass this flower by on the way. Stop and look deeply into it and look what it's saying to you. The great thing about Van Gogh is he didn't paint Sistine Chapel ceilings. He painted his bedroom. Now, what did he mean by that? Because a bedroom says what to us? You belong, you're home, you're safe. What does Starry Night say to us? Or if you want a different one, you're like, well, take any Rembrandt. Here's a man who saw deeply into the souls of human beings and was able to convey that through paint on canvas. So bring those two and use those as meditation texts.
I just have to add to that, Eddie. I love that metaphor so much because it's not only when you go into an art museum, you're like, oh, I love this piece, but there's also pieces you're like, ugh, I hate that piece, right? And every time I get to Vina Volcano, I'm like, ugh, I hate this piece, right? And it's not hate's a strong word, but my point being is that's also an interesting reflection too, right? It's challenging me to ask myself, what is it about these normative images of men and these idea of God as a very vertical metaphor? Why is that trigger me so much? What does it matter? I mean, God is referred to in 80 different ways in the Bible. Like, who can over 80 different ways? Like, why am I so triggered by that? Like, what is it about me? And that's what's exciting about it, is that just as in an art museum, something inspires you or something repulses you or something you walk right by last year stopped you this year, right? What's in you that's changed that caught your attention? It's funny. I've always used a springboard analogy of the prayer board, of the prayer book, but I like your analogy much more because a springboard is like leaping you into an unknown abyss. An art museum is allowing you to move about the building in a free way and discover all these other things that you may not have discovered in the past.
Yeah. And by the way, every rabbi in the world, well, not every rabbi, but all the good ones, if that rabbi says, please turn to page 27 and rise, and you say to yourself, I'm staying on 26, I'm not done yet, or I'm on page 40, they're not going to mind.
Not only that,
I
they're
would
going to
love
be
that.
thrilled.
I would
Yes.
love that. If you're so consumed with your prayer that you don't really care what's going on the bima right now because you're into it, stay there. Don't let me interrupt you.
I love that so much. There's one other hack that I wanted to share, and I don't know if we can do it typically during high holidays, but I think this year we can do it because there's social distancing. But this hack, I don't know if it's even allowed. So you can tell me, Rabbi Hirsch, forget this. But when you shinui makom, when you change your place, you change everything. You change your perspective, you change your ideas, who you're sitting next to. And I love, even if you're in a set seating with a family of 6 like we are, I'm sitting next to my husband and I've got maybe one of my kids, my daughter on one side. 45 minutes into the service, everybody change seats, right? Even if you can't go to another part of the sanctuary, which I know is a difficulty, change seats so that you're sitting next to someone different. There's a very different experience. When I sit next to one of my children, they hold my hand. I sit next to another one of my children, they play with my seat. I have another children that kind of has her back to me. And every time I try to put my hands on her, she slaps it away, right? She's a teenager, right? But those experiences also really affect how you feel and how you engage in shul. The other thing I would say is wear comfortable clothes. The clothes thing is a big thing in the high holidays. And yet, if you're not comfortable, you're not going to sit there. Like, I can't wear uncomfortable clothes to work. I can't wear uncomfortable clothes in general, especially after a year and a half of like living in sweats at home on the bottom half. Let me tell you, wear comfortable over everything else.
Wonderful. So there's a wonderful teaching that I cherish and I read every year in the Mishnah, which is the great code of Jewish law. That's the basis of our Judaism. So they raise an interesting question, which is so interesting. We are obligated to hear the sound of the shofar, okay? Yishma kol shofar, that's the bracha we're going to say. So the question they ask is, suppose you're walking down the boulevard on Rosh Hashanah morning and you pass a synagogue and it happens to be the moment they're blowing the shofar and you happen to hear it. Have you fulfilled your obligation of hearing the sound of the shofar? Simple little legal ritual question, but the answer is very profound. The answer is im kivein libo yatsa, im lav lav. Im kivein libo. If the person who hears the shofar turns their attention, their neshama, their soul, really gathers it in, really listens, not just hear it, but really listens to the shofar with intentionality, then it counts as having heard the shofar. But if he just hears it casually and proceeds on his way and doesn't stop to concentrate on it, well, then it doesn't really count. And I think that's so useful for some. First of all, it's useful for what we just talked about. If you come to synagogue in a casual way, just to let the service roll over you, and you don't spend any of the time really looking within, which is what the holiday demands, you haven't really done the holiday. For you, it's just been Tuesday. It hasn't been Yom Tov. But if you really come and say, I want to think about myself, my life, who I've been. I want to think about the patterns of my existence and who I love. I want to think about the people that matter to me most in my life and what I'm offering to them. I want to think about where I am on my journey. Then whatever happens in shul, you're going to walk out a different person. You've really, yatsa, it says, you've really fulfilled the obligation. And then I think it's so interesting that the place where the rabbis chose was listening. Because, you can't tell that from the person on the outside. when I see a person, I don't know if they're really listening or if they're just pretending to listen. In fact, sometimes me, myself, I don't know if I'm really listening. And, every time my wife has to say to me, did you just hear what I said? And I realize, no, I didn't. I was someplace else, right? Listening is one of the elemental exercises of truly concentrating. Because unlike eyes, you see, eyes you have to open and look. Ears are open all the time, but the mind that gathers in what we hear isn't open all the time. And kavanah, do you listen with kavanah? Do you listen with intentionality? Do you listen with deliberate, to be deliberate? Do you really, really listen? Do you really, really gather in what's going on around you in the world? Do you respond? That's such a wonderful idea. That's a wonderful idea. So, Sherre, how do we learn how to listen better?
I wish I had a instruction that made sense. I do think we say the Shema 3 times a day because God knows instinctually it is not our natural capability to listen, and we have to be reminded.
Yeah.
Often, frequently, daily, because our instinct is to not listen. And so I do think that I forget overnight. The last thing I say at night, is the Shema. And the last reminder is listen. And the first thing I do when I wake up is supposedly Shema. And I cannot tell you how many times I forget. Like I say Modeh Ani, and then I forget because something happens in that middle of the night where I'm a forgetful human. So this idea of listening requires a lot of repetition, a lot of practice, and a conscious effort. And I just want to clarify, when you said to be intentionally your yatzah, right? Your yotze, if you listen intentionally to the shofar, I want to be clear that that's a metaphor, right? Like, it's not that you listen to every prayer with the deepest of intention.
No.
It's that you're there to listen to the stirrings of your soul.
Right.
When else do you have 2 full days on a Tuesday and Wednesday to listen to what is troubling you, what is moving you, what is concerning you? Like, we don't devote that kind of time in our regular life. I know I'm really busy. I'm not like, oh, let me spend the next 4 hours in contemplation about the kind of mother I am or the kind of rabbi I am. So I just want to be clear. It's not about listening so intently to Hinani and making sure that you have not missed Kol Damama Dakav Tokef, right? If that's your thing, that's great. But it's to really listen for what your soul is saying to you in that quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Hinani, prayer means here I am. And the question is, where are you? It's the answer to the question that God asks Adam in the garden, Ayeka, where are you? And the question is, where are you? Where's the here that you are? And that's what the Mishnah is asking us to do, to ask that question, but to ask it with earnestness and recognize, look, I understand. Why do we have all of this superstructure for this? It's not just that we don't have the time to contemplate. It's scary.
Yes.
It's difficult. It's really uncomfortable to recognize, I'm not the husband I should be, or the father I should be, or the friend I should be, or the employee, or the worker, the member of the community I should be. Nobody wants to hear that about themselves. And yet you need to take on and really look. And sometimes we want to turn away and not look. And so the tradition says, Im kivein libo, if you want to be renewed this year, renewed from within, if you want the power and inspiration of a new year, you got to do the work of that kind of reflection, of that kind of examination. And then if you do it, you come out wholer, you come out better, holier, and you come out more whole.
It's interesting. I was thinking, Rabbi, how often when I'm counseling a family in grief, as they're going through Shiva, especially, they get really busy, super busy, like so busy. And I say to them, what would it look like not to be so busy? And they're like, I don't want to not be busy. I don't want to have to think about this loss. And I feel like we get in that modality in our lives, especially by Rosh Hashanah. It's demanding us to say, stop being rushing around, sit here and contemplate those very scary, hard questions, not to scare you, but because it's time to reflect.
Well, this morning we have given you all of our hacks.
Yeah.
Word, all of
Holiday
our
hacks
tricks,
by Rabbi Feinstein and Rabbi
all
Hirsch.
of our inside, inside
secret.
dope on how to get through Yontif through in your synagogue. So before we conclude, Sherre, why don't you share a little Yontif blessing, a little high holiday Rosh Hashanah blessing with everyone who's listening.
May this be a year that we find those reserves when we feel entirely depleted.
Mm.
May this be a year that we find joy in the subtle moments where we feel hopelessness. May this be a year that we see the divine spark of each and every human being, even the ones we struggle with, even those that bring us conflict. May we see that each one of us is the embodiment of the divine God, and that we feel and are embraced by his holiness or her holiness.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. And I would say, we've had a year and a half of COVID, and it has so changed us. It has so changed the way we live. It has taken away so much stuff. So this year I want to lose COVID, but not just the disease. I want to lose it as a metaphor. This year, let's take the masks off and let's really be the people we're meant to be, and not the people that the world about us has told us we have to be. Let's really be authentic. This year, let's not social distance anymore. Let's hold each other and hug each other, be friends and get close to each other. Let's go back and hold the people that we hurt and hold the people we infected and give them back health and strength and friendship and love. And this year, instead of making each other afraid with a cough or a sneeze, instead of making each other step back because they weren't sure we were the person they wanted to be so close to, let's make our love and our care and our healing and our helping infectious. And let's make our caring contagious. Shana Tova, a sweet, a happy, a healthy, and a good new year to you and to all of those you love. Thank you for being part of our Torah study this morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.